Welcome to the Rare Wellness Podcast. Wellness is a rare treasure hidden in the maze of daily challenges. In this podcast, we're going to explore uncommon pathways to health and vitality, cutting-edge topics of regenerative, longevity, and performance medicine, all delivered in bite-sized segments of around 5 minutes. Today, we're talking about the importance of muscle in health and vitality, and we're privileged to be joined today by Dr. Andrew Mock, a physician in family medicine and lifestyle medicine in Southern California, also a attending physician at a local university. Dr. Mock, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jamie. Thanks for having me. Excited for our conversation.
Yeah. So a little background, you are not only a physician, but the reigning world's strongest man. Is that correct?
I could say worlds. I have competed at World's Strongest Man twice. The best I ever placed is 6th, but I compete in the 231 weight class. But currently California's strongest man in that weight class.
What does that involve?
The way I explain it is strongman's very simple. We pick things up, we put it back down, sometimes in a different location than when we pick it up. And they tend to be pretty heavy things. So you may have seen the guys on ESPN that pull the trucks, flip the tires, pick up the big rocks. So that's what I do in my spare time.
Wow. And so we brought you on the episode today because in doing that, you, I'm assuming, know a lot about muscle building and wanted to pick your brain on the importance of muscle as we age and how it plays a role in our overall health. So just to kind of turn over to you with a broad question, why is maintaining muscle health and mass so important to our health and vitality, particularly as we age?
Yeah. And I mean, this is something that people will hear more and more about because we know it is one of the biggest predictors for longevity, not just your muscle mass, but also that muscle function. And unfortunately, for lots of different reasons, just with aging and also how we change as we get older, we tend to lose percentages of that muscle mass for every decade after 30. It's about 3 to 8%. And then by the time you hit 50, it gets faster, 10 to 15% of that muscle mass each decade. So by the time you're in your 80s, you've lost half of your muscle mass that you had. So it's not about the mass, but also the function as well.
That's frightening. So what do you do to prevent that?
You really have two main drivers that are going to promote that muscle mass: strength training and adequate dietary protein.
Well, we have an episode dedicated to talk a little bit about dietary protein and nutrition. Let's talk a little bit about strength training. What's your recommendation?
Absolutely. So just going based off the physical activity guidelines for Americans, the recommendation is all adults, regardless of age and chronic health condition status, should get at least 2 days per week of moderate intensity or greater of muscle strengthening activities for all major muscle groups. So there's a whole lot to unpack with just that one sentence.
Right. Yeah. So let's break it down. Like, what's the best way for somebody who, we're going to have listeners that are lifting weights on a regular basis and might be coming towards a plateau, want to break through, people that are kind of dabbling. And then there's people that are not exercising at all, but realizing they need to make some lifestyle changes for preservation of health span and lifespan and want to know, how do they get into this?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I would say is we can make it a lot simpler by focusing on compound movements. They are ways that we move throughout life, and they're going to give us our biggest bang for the buck. So when I'm teaching it, I break it down into 6 movements. You push things overhead. You pull things from overhead. You push things out in front of you. You pull things from out in front of you. You do a squat pattern like you're standing up and down from a chair. And you then do a hip hinge pattern like you're bending at the waist.
Perfect. That sounds easy.
And if you hit each one of those 6 movements twice per week for at least one set, then you would be meeting the guidelines, so long as you are in a strength training rep range at an appropriate intensity.
And what does that mean?
Yeah. So we know that strength is more preferentially promoted when we are lifting heavier weights for lighter reps. Fewer reps. If you do too many reps, it turns into cardio. So generally for strength training, we're recommending somewhere between 4 and 12 reps per set.
So the idea that you just have to go to muscle fatigue is not necessarily correct. You really want to be in that 4 to 12 reps per set.
Yes, but the muscle fatigue piece is very important. And the way that I teach that is using subjective measures of that. So some people may be familiar with a 1 to 10 RPE scale, rating of perceived exertion. where 10 out of 10 is maximum effort. But a very simple tool that you can use is what we call reps in reserve, meaning how many do you have left in the tank when you stop? And what we're looking for, especially with those heavier compound movements, is about 2 to 5 reps left in the tank. If you can do more than that, then it's not heavy enough. If you're doing less than that, it may be okay, but it might be harder to recover from that. And we see somewhere around 2 to 5 reps, that's that moderate intensity that we're looking for.
What about patients that might be having some struggles with some musculoskeletal issues and have a hard time getting to the weight needed to fatigue a muscle within that 4 to 12 reps?
Yeah.
I've traditionally said that lighter weight where you can control and just go more towards fatigue. What kind of advice would you give for that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. When we look at some of the osteoarthritis studies, different people will do, they'll have a varying amount of a response in terms of that tolerance. So some people will tolerate heavier weights for fewer reps, and then others will tolerate lighter weights for a lot more reps. So you really have to have some framework for that individual response. So the way I typically teach it is we can modify a few things. The range of motion that somebody's moving through, the intensity, and I would recommend we use that subjective intensity. How hard does it feel? How many reps do you have left in the tank? The volume of work, so the number of reps times sets, and then exercise selection. But to answer the other part is what are some things we can do to make it harder without necessarily being dependent on it being heavy? You can also change the tempo of the exercise. So slow it down, right? Instead of always moving as fast as you can, which will recruit more muscle fibers and motor units, you can slow down that descent or that eccentric part of the movement, and it will help you make the movement harder without being so load dependent.
That's great advice. Any thoughts on the importance of sleep and recovery on facilitating maintenance and growth of muscle?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a critical part of it. So the guideline recommendations are going to be for adults between 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. We know that if you are getting less than that 7, even if you are feeling like you're fine, that you will have impaired repair of that muscle damage that you're causing during exercise. A lot of mechanisms that are going on there, but just think about sleep as your body's time to do that janitorial work and come in and make those repairs. We know that cortisol, that stress hormone, goes up when we are getting less sleep. And if you want to have someone lose a whole lot of muscle mass, you can put them on high dose cortisol. So if that cortisol is going up because you're not getting enough sleep, that is just one of the mechanisms that muscle recovery can be impaired.
That's also fascinating. And with that, I would assume that stress would also play a significant role in accelerating or mitigating our muscle maintenance as we get older.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will say, right, there's two nice things. The first one is that's the beauty of using some sort of auto-regulation technique like that. How hard does it feel? Because what I tell my students is you can adjust the weight on the bar for the weight of life. So if it's a very heavy life day and you know how hard it was supposed to feel, suddenly you walk into the gym and it feels like everything's glued to the ground. We'll just back off, right? And we'll go to how hard was it supposed to feel. The other thing that I would say is the beauty of exercise is it's a great stress relieving tool. We know that physical activity, especially higher intensity physical activity, is about 4 times more effective as far as improving things like depression compared to some of the first line medications like SSRIs that we'll use. So in terms of how many people do you need to treat with a medication to help their mood, it's around 6 to 10. And then in exercise, 2 people.
There you go. Can't have a stronger argument for movement than that. So in closing, Dr. Mock, if you could give one piece of advice for someone looking to prioritize muscle health as they age, what would that be?
I think thinking about those 6 compound movements to hit all those major muscle groups and then doing that consistently. If you're hitting the muscle groups consistently, that adds up over time. But if the RPE, the reps in reserve, that seems overwhelming to you, you can see that happen. So when somebody is doing that set of squats, look for the slowdown. So if they're going at a normal speed, when it starts to slow down, that is a physiologic response that's happening. So you can see that happen, and that tells you that you've at least hit moderate intensity.
That's great. Well, Dr. Mock, I appreciate you joining us. And for those listening, if you found today's episode useful or learned something new, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with a friend. Your support helps us continue to provide free content and empower you on your journey to better health. Again, this is Dr. Jamie Lewis, joined with Dr. Mock, and reminding you that your body holds an incredible potential to heal, thrive, and perform. Sometimes it just needs the right tools to unlock its full potential. We'll see you in another episode where Dr. Mock and I will discuss nutrition in muscle building and maintenance. Thank you.